Everybody talks excitedly about the upside of automation and digitization, but neglects to mention the downside. Today, Coreyne Woodman-Hallebeck, founder of Progressive HR, and I talk about those downsides. Coreyne, everybody talks really excitedly about the upside of automation and digitization, and there are lots of upsides, productivity improvement, happier employees, happier work, increased profits. But nobody appears to talk about the downsides.
We need to be watchful of the ethics of AI, as well as how AI could possibly take away our being human. So the human elements of our cognition, we could lose our free will. Not doubtful that it'll happen, but also job losses. Again, I doubt that that's going to happen. But we could also have a real dependence on AI and lose our cognitive social skills as well as our survival skills. And we always have to be, thinking in the background about not being too dependent on it.
How do we get firms then to plan for those downsides? So, for example, I did an interview recently with Valor Svanson, and we get into very deep conversation around the fact that in contact centers, firms are rushing to automate. And it sounds fantastic, leave agents with the rump of the calls, leave them with the really high intellectual ones and so on. But the reality appears to be that they're left with the more complex calls. So there's no break in between those. And what happens is that a lot of folks are ringing up complaining. And of course, people forget to separate the agent from the poor service. So what happens is they ended up getting abused in their workplace verbally, and then there's no let up from that. So what you've got is complex call after complex call after complex call, with an agent who is technically now trapped in their home and can't get away from the workplace. How do we get firms to realize this, recognize these downsides, and try and put things in place to allow agents to cope a lot better?
Yeah. So my number one thing is always education. So when we educate people on the upsides of AI, we'll also be educating people on the downsides of AI. And so that doesn't mean scaring people, putting fear in people's minds, but basically saying, there's both sides to the coin. And in doing that, in communicating. So it's really, really important to educate everyone, all the stakeholders, on here's the great things that AI can help you with, task automation, helping you be better at work, learning faster. But then here's also the downsides, is that be watchful. Are you losing a little bit of yourself? Are you starting to become a little bit more dependent on AI? Are you feeling depressed? Are you having a little bit of mental burnout? And as you're aware of those things, you can kind of backpedal and say, okay, just checking in, having communication, talking with people. But that's the really important thing, is just making sure that we're educated and that we communicate that these things can happen, and just to be aware of it.
Do governments have a role to play, Coreyne, in terms of incentivizing really good automation and digitization, and disincentivizing firms through maybe legislation and tax from all the negative consequences of automation and digitization?
Absolutely. And I am a firm believer that we should not give all the power to governments and policies. They are pulled by constituents. My belief is that we should form different groups of different types of stakeholders to help create policy for AI and create ethical policy for AI. People that are not influenced by defense, people that are not influenced by economies. Governments do play a part in making sure that they are they are creating different groups that help them to align policy with what is the best for humans.
Outside of government, outside of firms, there's events in life that really shape how we digitize, automate, live, grow, spend our time. One of those this year was COVID. My question for you, do you think we have learned valuable lessons from COVID? And let me explain that a little bit more. When someone, God forbid, has a heart attack, they promise themselves 1,001 different things. Their life will change, how they work will change, how they live, the hours they put in. For some, they go back to the way they were before and actually don't change at all. And as a matter of fact, I seen on LinkedIn a post not more than a day or two ago where an executive assistant was being advertised, with the stipulation that they were going to be office-based. I kind of worry when I see stuff like that, or HFS's report saying that 60% of workers will be expected to be office-bound, that we haven't actually learned anything from COVID at all. What's your take on that?
That's really interesting. So I do believe that every single person has learned something, that they want to live they want to live a good life from COVID. And that I think, I honestly think that it's a lot of the media that are hyping these CEOs, like the WeWork CEO, saying that, the people that will go back to the office will be considered to be the most productive, or the people that go back to the office will be considered to be the most engaged. And I don't believe that's true. Definitely, we have learned that we have one life and it's very, very short. And so doesn't matter, keeping up with the Joneses, how much money we have. It doesn't matter how many material things we have. It doesn't matter how famous we are. What matters is our lives and how we live them. And we want to live them to the best ability that we can. And you're seeing that right now with there's a huge amount of people that are not willing to go back to work right now unless they have the absolute right conditions. And so we only really hear a lot of those CEOs, or a lot about those companies that are saying that, nope, you got to go back to the office. This is the most important thing. And that's what's being hyped right now. Why that is, I don't know. I think it's maybe because it's the most controversial. But then you have probably about, I would say 80% of the people saying, no, I'm going to put my foot down. I am not going back to the office. I'm going to find something else to do in life that makes me happier. If I have to sell my big house, if I have to sell my really nice car, if I have to not, go shopping trip or on vacation for a long time, I just want to live my best life. And to your point is that we have learned something, and the media is just hyping right now the things that are controversial and not necessarily what we've learned.
I sure hope that's the case. For those, I sure do.
The media likes the media likes drama. I mean, that whole idea around how much drama did the CEO of WeWork create when he said, "Oh, no, you're not engaged unless you go into the office."
How do organizations, Coreyne, then design for work, this life-work balance or work-life balance, whatever way you want to put it? How do they design to take advantage of all of the technology, the momentum that's been driven for staff to really work together, to change the culture of an organization, to take the best of everyone who wants to work from home and the best of everyone who wants to stay and work, and vice versa, or a mix of everything else? How do they design for the digital age, or what might be, hopefully, the people age?
Yeah, that's a hard question, because you're really talking about how do you design for each individual what each individual wants. And I think that we don't actually quite know that yet. However, I'm a big proponent for the hybrid workplace and also a flexible workplace. And the point being is that if you trust people to do their job, they will do their job. If you tell them, I trust you, and what do you need to do your job, and offer them the tools, they'll figure it out. I would say that if you're looking at designing for the workplace, one of the first things that you have to do is put in some sort of listening tool. And when I say listening tool, I don't mean Big Brother. What I'm saying is that you need to have some sort of listening, responsive feedback to all the policies that you're thinking about putting in. So some type of listening platform. So when you do consider new changes to design or policy and how that's going to affect people, you can get rapid response feedback. And by that way, listening to your employees and what they want and what their experiences are, you can appropriately design for now and what the future may bring.
Argument, and I'm posing this just for argument's sake more than anything. This is work. This isn't life. are employers expected to bend and yield a little bit too much? And you use the word trust, but
Mm-hmm.
employers have seen for quite some time, they give people the internet and then they look at the stats and they see 4 hours of Facebook, and then wonder whether they should have given the trust. Are we trying too hard as employers to give everybody what everyone wants, forgetting that this is work?
Well, that's a good question. So the question is, what is work? So if I'm spending 4 hours on Facebook during my work time, or maybe I'm doing something for work, maybe I'm not, but maybe I'm looking for inspiration for something I'm trying to write. Maybe if I am on LinkedIn for a long period of time, I'm also looking up information. Same thing with Facebook. Maybe I'm doing some sort of research into something. So, what work is different for everybody. Everybody becomes inspired by different things. The point is, what are the outcomes? What are the outcomes that the employer is looking at? The employer should not. Here's I don't like using should, but shall the employer um, dictate how you spend your time for getting what you need to get done, as long as you get the work done. So some people may take 3 hours to write a blog article, for example, or 3 hours to write a job design manual. And some people may take 6 hours because they need a different type of inspiration. Now, I think I'm going down a little bit of a rabbit hole here when I'm answering your question. But do employers give too much trust, or are they bending too much? I don't think they're bending enough, honestly. I mean, look at where we are right now. We're in a extremely tight labor market. The birth rate is going down. It's going to be more and more difficult to find people that want to work in the antiquated, traditional 40-hour work week, working 9 to 5. Honestly, really, if you want the most talented people, you do have to personalize and individualize what you're offering people. And that's purely my opinion. I think that's what brings out the most productive in people. And also, going back to the use of AI, is that once we do have that AI supported helping us take away those mundane tasks, you'll be really surprised at how creative and how productive people can be in their jobs. And so really that 40-hour work week, that idea of trust, that idea of like getting the outcomes only if I see people in their seats, will really go away. We just have to trust that that's going to happen.
I kind of like that answer, and I was deliberately being provocative just to see what you would say and what the audience would react, because I've seen mixes. I've seen on LinkedIn one boss mentioning, I don't trust my staff, hence they're coming back to work. And I was thinking, gosh, you've more problems in your workforce than you do have work outcomes. But it is a little bit, I think our starting point is kind of skewed. We start with 40 hours, 9 to 5, and then compare against that. Whereas I think you put it beautifully, which is actually what are the business outcomes you want to achieve, and what is the best way to achieve those particular outcomes. It should be designed for individuals. I think we've got the technology, we should have the management skills, and given the trust, employees, every time I've seen it handed over, given that trust, tend to respond really, really carefully. That will be the interesting bit for me. For those that force employees to come back and force this 9 to 5, I don't trust you, you have to be here culture, I will be quite surprised how many employees they've actually got when employees have so much choice.
Yeah, and that's the other thing that we've learned from COVID, is we really learned to have confidence as employees, as a workforce. We've had learned to have confidence in ourselves, confidence in our decisions, and confidence that we don't have to live by somebody else's rule or by somebody else's hand. That's definitely something we've learned, and we're exercising that power right now.
What do you see as the leader of the future, and how should firms operate in this new utopia?
The role of the employer will change from manager, architect of how to get work done, to a role of making sure that employees are living their best lives. So, we talk about, we have to be careful that AI may take away, or may it impede our cognitive skills, may impede our communication skills. And really the role of the employer of the future will be that partner with employees, making sure that they are being taken care of, that their mental health is being taken care of, that they're not losing their humanness, and that they're living the fullest life. So really, that's a very I would say, utopian view of something that could be dystopian.
Thank you so much indeed. That was absolutely fantastic to listen to you today. I wish you every success with Progressive HR and every success with a ever burgeoning LinkedIn Live and LinkedIn community. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk about the upsides and the downsides and the bits in between about HR, the future work, data analytics, AI, and everything in between. I think we covered quite a few topics there today.